Ken Burns, good evening. Sometimes it feels that the legacy of the Vietnam War is bigger, longer even than the war itself. And I'm wondering, did you come to understand the idealism that sort of initiated, that kicked off the Vietnam War when you started work on it?
Yes, I did. I think it was pretty obvious to both me and Lynn Novick that it was begun in good faith by decent people, as we say in the opening narration, but that quickly becomes corrupted by sort of mixed signals. We've initially been attracted to Ho Chi Minh and his revolutionary movement, but the French are pressing us to help us restore their colony. That doesn't work out. Almost all the presidents, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon, know that there's no daylight, as Johnson said there, that there's not really a sense of victory, but what we say in public is always happy and we're plowing forward. What they say in private, we know from the tapes, is an entirely different thing. And so what you have is essentially the end of a kind of sense of American invincibility and end of maybe perhaps innocence, and the beginning of not just a skeptical response to government, which is of course healthy, but a cynical one, which is of course toxic and I think has metastasized. The divisions of Vietnam are being visited on us in this moment. Or another way to put it is that the hyper-partisanship that has sort of paralyzed the United States today, the seeds for that were sown during the Vietnam era.
Because of that erosion in trust of our leadership?
I think so. You know, we had been through what Americans call, for some strange reason, the Second World War as the good war. I don't see how the greatest cataclysm in human history, which took the lives of 60 million people, can be that. But in a Vietnam era where the country is divided in half, polarized over for or against, and the kind of rancor there, something happened. Something was lost, and it is our hope. I mean, we just want to be storytellers and tell a good story. And as you said in your introduction, you know, what we didn't know is just so extraordinary that it was necessary for us to just drop our conventional wisdom, our baggage going in, and just relearn the whole thing and try to share a complicated story. But now that it's done, now that the film is being released in the United States, you realize that it perhaps has the possibility to help pull out some of the fuel rods that have intensified the heat in these partisan arguments that take place over everything.
On that note, give us a sense of the reaction from audiences in the preview screenings. You invited veterans, you invited protesters. What happened?
It's been wonderful, and I've toured around the country, and I've had large groups of people, 1,000, 2,000, in 30 or 40 different cities, and I ask, as people are often wont to do, for the veterans to stand up, and then I say, stay standing. Now I'd like to not only salute you and your service, but let's ask the people who were engaged in protesting the war to stand up. And then I just point out that everybody looks about the same. Their grandpas or grandmas, they're, you know, have put on a few too many pounds, and that what they want, and that too often Americans forget the thing that we're good at. In our Civil War series, the historian and novelist Shelby Foote said, Americans like to think of themselves as uncompromising people, but our genius is for compromise. And when that broke down, we went to war, in that case, causing the death of 750,000 of our own people, the American Civil War. In Vietnam, it was not that tragic, but we began to instill a sense of the other in those who disagreed with us that pertained to this day. And Mark Twain famously said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Yeah.
And after 10 years of working on this, you wake up and you realize the rhymes are there. A White House in disarray, obsessed with leaks, demonstrations against that administration taking place all across the country, huge document drops of stolen classified material, accusations that a political campaign reached out to a foreign power at the time of election to influence that campaign, a president certain the media is lying, making up stories against him. It's almost as if we've visited the Vietnam War in every single way. But of course, this was all true of Vietnam when we started 10 years ago, and the film was essentially finished before the general election began.